A desert wind howled through cracked, sun-bleached mesquite and sagebrush as a scorching Nevada sun began its slow climb over a horizon of jagged mesas and endless sand. Amid the barren expanse, where each grain of dust whispered secrets of loss and hope, a tattered stagecoach rattled into the small frontier market of Drebone. The marketplace, a cluster of faded canvas stalls and weathered wooden stands, bustled briefly with barter shouts and the clamor of weary travelers seeking respite. It was here, amidst the heat and smoke of a rough, unforgiving day, that Ezra McKay, a stoic widower haunted by years of quiet grief, first beheld her. Ezra's face was carved by sorrow and endless deserts, lined with memories of a wife and child he had lost to time and circumstance. He wore his loss like a heavy duster, and his eyes were those of a man who had seen too many lonely nights. With a slow, measured gait, he stepped off the creaking stagecoach and surveyed the crowded market with wary eyes that had grown accustomed to judgment and cruelty. Rumors circled like vultures. Whispers of a girl, barely 17, abandoned by her parents for reasons unknown, left alone and vulnerable in this forsaken town. There she was, standing by a small stall laden with trinkets and faded wares. Her dark hair, twisted into a loose braid, fell around a lean, determined face that bore a mixture of defiance and quiet sorrow. Dressed in a simple, worn dress that had once been bright but now held the muted colors of desert twilight, she clutched a delicate gold band around her wrist, a cherished keepsake, perhaps, from another life. In her eyes, deep and unspoken, there shimmered a secret that even the blazing sun could not fully expose. Ezra watched as the girl hesitated at reaching out to buy a small bundle of heirloom ribbons. A flicker of sympathy stirred within him, mingled with a sense of responsibility he'd long since buried. He stepped forward and cleared his throat softly. "You alone, miss?" he asked in a husky, measured tone that carried both caution and a long-forgotten tenderness. The girl startled, her eyes meeting his in a moment of mutual recognition of shared solitude. Slowly, she nodded, a wary but fragile smile breaking through her guarded demeanor. By the time the market's clamor began to subside, Ezra had arranged, through quiet barter and a few kind words, to see the girl off the stagecoach. In exchange for a few dollars and a promise to provide shelter, the girl, who offered no name at first, allowed him to escort her away from Drebone. It was a gesture that set hearts aflame in the lonely corners of the Nevada frontier, where hope was as rare as water in the scorching dust. On the long, winding road out of the market, the desert stretched vast and unyielding, its silence filled only by the rhythmic clopping of the stagecoach wheels and the distant cry of a lone hawk. As they rode, Ezra's thoughts wandered to memories of a life lost, a wife whose laughter had once filled these voids, and a little child who had once held his hand on dusty trails. His prayerful nights had been punctured by silent pleas for a miracle, a sign that perhaps the unkind fates might offer him redemption. Unbeknownst to him, a small miracle had already been entrusted to his care. When the coach finally halted before an isolated homestead perched on the edge of a rugged canyon, a world apart from the harsh clamor of Drebone, Ezra swung the door open and helped the girl down. The homestead was modest, a scattering of adobe buildings with flat roofs, long shadows dancing on sun-cracked floors, and a gentle fire pit that promised warmth against the chill that came with the desert night. As they stepped inside, the twilight deepened, bathing the space in soft amber hues. Here, among the relics of bygone pioneers and the slow pulse of earth, Ezra intended to offer refuge from a world that had long been unkind. The girl hesitated by the doorway, looking back one last time to the fading dust of the market. Her eyes, dark as a desert night, held something unspoken, a mixture of fear and determination. Slowly she murmured, "I have nothing left." In that moment, the gold band upon her wrist, gleaming faintly in the dying light, seemed to pulse as if echoing a promise. Ezra's heart tightened. "You're safe here," he said, his voice calm yet imbued with the weight of his own regrets. "We all have scars. Here, you'll be cared for." They settled in the modest kitchen of the largest adobe house. Ezra set about lighting a small lantern, its flame dancing over aged wooden beams and rattling the loose, handmade pottery that lined a shelf. The room filled with a pungent aroma of burning sage and a promise of fresh bread, as Ezra, with a careful hand and a quiet dignity, began to prepare a simple meal. Josie's eyes glanced down at the gold band on the girl's wrist, so much like a piece of a forgotten dream, and he wondered what secret it might hold. In the stillness of that moment, while the desert wind whispered against the adobe walls, the seed of mystery had been planted in his mind. Later that night, as the homestead settled into a hushed calm under a star-pierced sky, the girl finally spoke a name barely audible in the dim lantern glow. "Lila," she whispered softly. "I am Lila." The name, fragile and hopeful, hung in the air like a promise. Ezra nodded, though words failed him. In the silence that followed, the only sound was the wind's mournful sigh and the distant echo of hoofbeats on barren paths, a sound that sent a shiver down both their spines. Before sleep could bring accidental solace, a shadow crossed the threshold of the homestead, a solitary figure, a man, his face obscured by the brim of a battered hat, stood just outside, his presence dark and foreboding. His eyes, catching the faint gleam of Lila's gold band, held an inscrutable intensity that made the air thicken with dread. Ezra peered toward the intruder, the words of a long-forgotten prayer on his lips, a prayer for mercy, for a miracle. For a split second, the promise of that miracle seemed to flicker in the uncertain light. Lila's eyes widened as she sensed attention. "Who is he?" she asked in a trembling voice. Ezra shook his head slowly, his gaze never leaving the stranger. The man said nothing. He simply stood there, a silent harbinger of an unknown past and a threat yet to be defined. Behind him, the desert stretched into darkness, an endless void that seemed to swallow secrets whole. In that precarious moment, as the homestead lay between night and dawn, Ezra felt a stirring, a fragile thread of fate weaving through his grief-worn soul. The promise of a miracle, once clutched tight in desperate prayers, now seemed to shimmer on the horizon. Yet, as the silent figure remained at the door, a suspenseful uncertainty gripped the room. Would Lila's secret, whatever miraculous gift she carried, be enough to redeem them both, or would the specter of a troubled past, and the threats it invited, force them apart before hope could truly be reborn? As the night deepened and the stranger's presence lingered like an unspoken question, Ezra pulled Lila gently toward the flickering lamplight. In the quiet that followed, each heartbeat rang with the potential of coming revelations and the promise of redemption or ruin. The desert, ever relentless, whispered of secrets hidden in the golden band on Lila's wrist and in the silent prayer of a widower whose loss had never truly ceased. With a shadowed figure at the door and the echo of distant hoofbeats stirring the dead of night, what miracle does Lila truly carry? And can Ezra's shattered heart find solace before the darkness claims them both? The echo of hooves faded into the scorching Nevada dusk as a mysterious stranger's shadow dissolved into the endless sea of sand and mesas. Inside the adobe homestead, the evening air was heavy, laden with the sweet, acrid scent of burning sage and the distant murmur of the desert wind. Ezra McKay and Lila sat together at the rough-hewn table, the fading light dancing over their weathered faces. A few moments earlier, when the shadow had loomed at the door, an uneasy silence filled the space, a silence that pressed upon them with unspoken questions. Who was that man, and what secret did Lila keep him behind that glinting gold band? Ezra's voice broke the quiet as he carefully set down a clay cup of bitter coffee. "You're safe here," he murmured, though his eyes betrayed worry. His tone was soft, a gentle promise echoing against the backdrop of his own deep, unhealed grief. The homestead was modest, its adobe walls scarred by wind and sand, yet held a fragile warmth, like the first fragile flicker of hope amid long, dark nights. Outside, the low hum of the desert night began to rise. In that stillness, the two found solace in their shared isolation, each carrying the burdens of loss and secrets that time had not yet healed. Lila's slender fingers brushed the cold metal of her gold band, worn smooth by years of sorrowful remembrance. The band, a legacy of a promise unfulfilled and a past of abandonment, seemed to pulse faintly in the dim light, as if it guarded an entire world of unspoken truths. She would sometimes trace its engraved pattern absent-mindedly, recalling all that had been taken from her and all that might yet be reclaimed, a secret, perhaps, that even Ezra's quiet prayers might have once yearned for. Though she had not revealed its full meaning, its presence spoke volumes about the miracle that she carried, the very miracle that her safeguard might yet awaken. In the gentle glow of the lantern, Ezra led her outside to the modest fire pit, where a well-worn log fire struggled against the cooling night. The desert, with its vast, sepia-toned majesty, wrapped the homestead in soft hues, and the cadence of the wind seemed to murmur forgotten legends. Together, they set about the simple tasks of life that slowly stitch hope into a battered heart. Ezra fetched water from a weathered well, the bucket plunging into darkness before emerging with a small gurgle that echoed like the whisper of old prayers. Lila helped carry the water back, her steps quiet and measured, leaving faint traces in the dust that the wind would soon claim. As they labored side by side, the distance between them shrank. Ezra's rough hands, worn by hard work and haunted by memories of loss, gently brushed against Lila's as she balanced a heavy pail. He glanced at her, eyes softening as he recalled the day he'd first seen her at Drabone's market, a day marked by silent grief and whispered rumors of abandonment. In that moment, the desert around them seemed to hold its breath, as if witnessing the tentative mending of two souls both scarred by life's cruel turns. Later, while the fire crackled softly and the cool night air mingled with the aroma of wood smoke and fresh water, Ezra returned to the cookhouse. He settled at a worn wooden table to prepare a simple meal. Cornbread and dried beans simmered slowly in a chipped iron pot. As he worked, Lila sat quietly at the edge of the room, her eyes tracing the delicate patterns of light and shadow that played on the adobe walls. The silence between them was comfortable yet heavy, punctuated only by the occasional clink of utensils and the soft rustle of dusty paper, when Lila retrieved a small, folded note from within her dress. This note, written in spidery handwriting, bore a single cryptic message: "Beware the mark of silver in the shadow. Your secret is not forgotten." Lila's hand trembled as she reread the words. Her gold band pulsed with unspoken urgency, and she wondered if this message was connected to it. A hidden key to a miracle that had always been just out of reach. In a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I've carried this for so long. Perhaps it is tied to all I've lost." Ezra's heart ached at the sound. Here was a girl so young, whose pain went deep and whose mystery was as vast as the desert itself. Before Ezra could speak, the air outside stirred and a distant rumble of approaching hooves pierced the quiet. The stranger who had appeared earlier was gone now, yet his threat lingered like a shadow on the wall. Tommy, a lean and earnest ranch hand whose eyes shone with worry and loyalty, then arrived breathless. "Sir, there are fresh tracks by the western fence," he announced urgently. His words carried the weight of impending danger, a subtle indication that the threat was not yet past, but was drawing ever closer. Ezra and Lila exchanged glances. The fading note, the gold band, and the now fresh tracks painted a picture of continued menace. Someone or something was determined to reclaim a secret that Lila bore, a secret that might be the very miracle Ezra had silently prayed for all these years. The desert, vast and unyielding, seemed suddenly to conspire against them, its endless dunes and low-hanging clouds hiding danger as old as time. The evening progressed slowly, each moment heavy with anticipation, as the homestead seemed to brace itself against the unknown. Lila sat again near the doorway, clutching the note and hesitantly caressing her gold band. Ezra, pausing in his dinner preparations, walked over quietly. "We will face this together," he said, his voice resolute despite the tremor of his own grief. "No one, not even the winds of fate, can rob us of our strength. You have a story here, and we will protect it." His words, sparse yet sincere, wrapped around like a shelter from the encroaching darkness. Quiet moments passed as the emerald sky deepened to a dark indigo, punctuated by a chill that whispered of coming storms. Outside, the soft crunch of footsteps near the western fence grew louder, a rhythmic reminder that the threat was not merely a rumor, but something real that edged ever closer. The desert wind carried a hint of metallic scent, like old coins clinking in a forgotten chest, mingled with the dust. In the hush before the inevitable confrontation, Lila's eyes flashed with determination that belied her quiet exterior. "I intend to discover what this secret means," she said softly, her voice clear despite the tremor beneath. "I need to know why they want what I carry so dearly." Ezra's face, usually so stoic, softened with both sorrow and steely resolve. "We will find the answer," he promised, though uncertainty still flickered in his eyes. The silent charge in his voice carried the weight of countless prayers, 1,000 whispered wishes for redemption, and hope that he had made in the dead of lonely nights. As the first gust of a desert storm stirred the edges of property, whipping sand against weathered stones and rattling the adobe walls, Tommy reappeared with a look of grim determination. "I found something near those tracks," he said, holding out a small, intricately carved token that glinted under the lantern's light, a silver medallion adorned with a barely discernible crest. "It matches the style of that note, and perhaps your band, Miss Lila." The medallion's cold surface sent a shiver through Lila as she took it in trembling fingers. The object seemed to pulse with significance, a relic of a bygone era, and the key to her hidden miracle. The medallion, the note, and the ominous tracks had interwoven a tapestry of mystery that pressed down on them with relentless weight. As the storm seemed to gather strength outside, Lila's gaze shifted from the medallion to Ezra, silently pleading for protection and understanding. In that charged twilight, amid the clamor of approaching danger and the haunting voices of a desert that never forgets, the boundaries between past and present blurred. Every breath was heavy with the potential for revelation, a promise that what she carried might indeed be the miracle Ezra had prayed for so long, yet also a beacon calling forth powerful adversaries. As darkness crept slowly over Silver Sage Ranch, the homestead's fragile light glowed like a promise amid despair. The medallion's significance had been partially revealed, its crest a mirror to the gold band's secret inscription, but the full truth remained hidden in the shifting sands of fate. Outside, the storm raged softly, and the sound of returning hoofbeats set hearts pounding with dread and anticipation. As the new silver medallion glints ominously in Lila's trembling hand, and the desert storm gathers its fury, a new menace is approaching. What will the token reveal about Lila's secret? And can Ezra's weary heart protect her before the darkness claims their fragile hope? The wind's howl grew louder as storm clouds gathered over the Nevada desert, and the homestead's adobe walls shuddered under the force of a brewing tempest. Amid this tumult, the silver medallion that Lila had clutched moments before began to glint in the fading light, its intricate crest reflecting a map whose hidden meaning pulsed like a heartbeat in the foreboding dusk. The storm roared, its gusts whipping sand in feverish patterns, while medallion's glow hinted at deeper secrets. Secrets that would soon bind Lila's fate to the miracle Ezra had unknowingly prayed for. Inside the humble main room of the homestead, Ezra McKay and Lila sat close by the dying embers of a small fire. The low, flickering light caressed rough-hewn beams and cast long shadows across their weary faces. A silence, pierced only by the distant rumble of thunder and the soft clink of pottery as Tommy, the loyal ranch hand, moved about, filled the room with an air of anxious expectation. Ezra, his rugged features etched by grief and years of lonely prayer, regarded Lila with a mix of tenderness and cautious scrutiny. Lila's eyes, guarded yet determined, rested on the silver medallion that rested by her side, a treasure that had emerged from the chaos of the storm and the cryptic note left earlier. "Ezra," she said softly after a long pause, her voice as fragile as the desert breeze. I have something to share." Her words, sparse and tentative, seemed to suspend time in the charged twilight. Ezra inclined his head, his gaze never wavering from hers. The memory of her silence at the market, the look on her face as she clutched her gold band, and the cryptic warnings that had been etched in both note and medallion now converged like mirages before him. Lila slowly slid the medallion from her trembling fingers and held it out as if presenting an offering. "This medallion, I've carried it with me since the day I was left behind," she murmured, her accent soft yet edged with distant sorrow. "It belonged to my family, the one that guarded something sacred. They told me that our bloodline carried the secret to a lost spring, a miracle that could restore life to barren lands, as my mother believed it would heal hearts and fortunes." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and the weight of her history seemed to fill the small room. Ezra's rough hand stilled as these words washed over him. His wife had once prayed fervently for a sign, a place of healing, a beacon of hope in the unforgiving desert. Now, hearing Lila's quiet confession, he felt as though that long-dormant prayer had been answered, though in a manner he neither expected nor fully understood. "This," he said, voice low and trembling with a mixture of awe and sorrow, "is the miracle I have begged for in silent nights." The words, uttered in a hushed whisper, carried both redemption and the burden of loss. Outside, the relentless wind battered the homestead, and the distant boundary of property became shrouded in swirling sand and ominous silhouettes. Tommy appeared at the door, his face drawn with concern. "Sir," he said softly, "there are more footprints out by the western fence, the ones with the mark. The stranger's men are back." His tone was urgent but measured, a familiar refrain in these harsh lands. The news struck the small gathering like a sudden chill, and a palpable tension gripped the room. Ezra's rough hand stilled as these words washed over him. His wife had once prayed fervently for a sign, a place of healing, a beacon of hope in the unforgiving desert. Now, hearing Lila's quiet confession, he felt as though that long-dormant prayer had been answered, though in a manner he neither expected nor fully understood. "This," he said, voice low and trembling with a mixture of awe and sorrow, "is the miracle I have begged for in silent nights." The words, uttered in a hushed whisper, carried both redemption and the burden of loss. Outside, the relentless wind battered the homestead, and the distant boundary of property became shrouded in swirling sand and ominous silhouettes. Tommy appeared at the door, his face drawn with concern. "Sir," he said softly, "there are more footprints out by the western fence, the ones with the mark. The stranger's men are back." His tone was urgent but measured, a familiar refrain in these harsh lands. The news struck the small gathering like a sudden chill, and a palpable tension gripped the room. Ezra's eyes narrowed as he rose, casting one last longing look toward Lila. "Stay here," he instructed firmly, though his voice wavered on the edge of uncertainty. "I must see what they want. I won't let them take from us, not what you carry." Lila's hand instinctively went to her wrist, the gold band and medallion entwined in their silent ritual of hope. "I'm not afraid," she replied, though her voice wavered. Ezra stepped out into the storm-laden evening, where the wind whipped dust against his weathered face, and the sound of heavy boots grew louder on the hard-packed earth. Every step echoed with memories of his past, a painful litany of loss and regret, but now fueled by a purpose reborn in Lila's quiet strength. As he moved toward the western fence, he noticed the fresh tracks. They were deeper and more deliberate than before. The footprints bore an unmistakable emblem, a crude engraving that matched the silver medallion's design, the ram's head and slender sword. They led off toward a stand of scraggly juniper trees, where the land touched the edges of a long-forgotten trail. Back inside, Lila paced near the window as the wind moaned outside. The room's adobe walls, bathed in the flickering glow of a dying lantern, seemed to whisper their own tales of solitude and silent endurance. Her thoughts drifted to everything she had lost, her family, her innocence, her past. Yet, amid the echo of those losses, a steely resolve began to crystallize. This medallion held a truth, one that was both a curse and a blessing. It was the last vestige of her heritage, and may well be the miracle that could restore what once was promised. But at what cost? The distant murmur of conflicting voices, a blend of anxious whispers from nearby traders and the hoarse shouts of judgmental locals at the market in Derbone, filled Lila's mind with images of a past she had long tried to forget. Those voices had accused her of dishonor, labeling her as a forsaken child of a broken legacy. Yet now, in the sanctuary of the homestead, her secret began to merge with Ezra's own burden, both haunted by loss and yearning for redemption. As thunder rumbled on the horizon, echoing across the barren desert like a solemn hymn, a faint figure emerged from the swirling sands near the juniper trees. Through the haze of dust and the clamor of the storm, a man could be seen, a stranger with a stern, unreadable face and eyes that glinted with an icy resolve. His presence was a stark reminder that the threat was not yet past, but lurking still amid the shifting winds of fate. Ezra, following the trail with caution and unfolding memories, paused at the edge of the juniper grove. The fresh tracks led him directly to this figure, who now stood motionless, silently assessing the land and the secret guarded. A gust of unforgiving wind swept through the grove, carrying with it a shiver of foreboding. In that charged, breathless moment, Ezra's hand tightened around his worn hat, and he squinted against the storm's fury. Was this man here to reclaim what the medallion promised? Or was he an agent of the greedy forces that had long sought to exploit the legacy of those wronged by fate? Inside the homestead, as the storm outside pressed its relentless fury against the adobe walls, Lila's heart pounded. The medallion lay close to her on a rough wooden table, where she had carefully unfolded the cryptic note once more. Its faded words, "Beware the mark of silver in the shadow," were a constant echo of warning. She could almost feel the weight of destiny in the gentle pressure of the gold band on her wrist, a reminder that her secret was more than mere ancestry. It was a miracle that could restore the barren lands to their lost fertility and honor the prayers of those who had once dreamed of a better future. Yet, its full truth remained hidden, locked away in layers of familial betrayal, and a secret that even now made her pulse race with fear and hope. As the distant stranger's presence loomed ever closer, Ezra and the man faced each other amid the shifting grays of the storm. The silence between them was broken only by the ragged cry of the wind and the steady beat of hooves. Ezra's voice, low and resolute, cut through the tempest. "What is your intent, stranger?" he demanded, his eyes fixed on the encroaching figure. The man said nothing, only continued to stand motionless, as if gauging the man before him. Meanwhile, in a grim moment of shared solitude back at the homestead, Lila's breath caught as she realized that the object she had hidden away, the medallion, might be the very key to everything that had been both lost and sought in these lands. As the storm began to wane and the first tentative rays of a ghostly moon broke through the dark clouds, Ezra, with a heavy heart and a cautious step, crossed back into the homestead. His encounter with the stranger had left him with more questions than answers. The man's silent glare, as potent as a loaded gun, lingered in his mind. Returning inside, he found Lila seated by the window, her eyes burning with quiet resolve as she clutched the medallion. In the soft, trembling glow of the lantern, she whispered, "I can't let them take this from me. It's all I have of my past." Her tone was both a plea and a vow. Ezra's face hardened with a mix of regret and protective fervor. "We must learn its meaning," he said, his voice thick with the weight of secrets and shared loss. "If this map hidden in your band is the miracle I prayed for, then we must guard it with our lives." His words, sparse as they were, carried the promise of redemption, a promise that the past, no matter how painful, might yield the hope of a new beginning. But outside, the desert night grew heavy with tension as the stranger's men began to stir once more, their hooves resonating like a dark heartbeat upon the hard-packed earth. The sound of distant encroaching footsteps made Ezra's blood run cold. As he stepped to the door, ready to confront the threat, his heart pounded with the foreknowledge that the secrets of the medallion and the weight of Lila's legacy were about to collide with force that could change everything. As the desert's chill intensifies and the stranger's intent remains shrouded in silence, will Ezra and Lila's fragile hope withstand the storm of approaching foes? And what terrible truth will the medallion's hidden map soon reveal? Hoofbeats pounded in the distance as the storm's fury subsided into a heavy, relentless hush. In the cool aftermath, The adobe of Silver Sage Ranch glowed dully under the ghostly light of a rising moon, while the winds mingled with the murmurs of impending doom. Outside, through drifting shrouds of settling sand, the strangers' men advance again, silent silhouettes with the cold precision of a well-rehearsed threat. The medallion's subtle gleam, clutched tightly in Lila's trembling hand, pulsed with forbidden truths as though it held the secret of a sacred spring, a miracle promised in Ezra's desperate prayers. Now, the map's partial revelation threatened to shatter the fragile peace Ezra had attempted to build, a peace balanced precariously between redeeming hope and the ghosts of a painful past. Inside the homestead's main room, Ezra stood near a low, wooden table stained with the faint colors of well-worn use. The air was thick with the soft crackle of a dying fire and the scent of damp earth, its silence punctuated only by the distant rattle of hooves on hard desert floors and the occasional, mournful note of harmonica from somewhere beyond the walls. Ezra's dark eyes bore solemn resolve as he glanced toward the open door. His heart pounded with memories of prayerful nights when he had pleaded for a miracle to heal the barren land his beloved wife had once dreamed of restoring. Now, that same miracle lay hidden in the map, secretly inscribed on Lila's gold band and echoed by the silver medallion, a bond of hope that both glimmered and threatened. Lila, her delicate features illuminated by the tremulous lamplight, sat near a small window, her gaze fixed on the gathering darkness outside. The medallion's engraved crest, a ram's head entwined with slender sword, seemed almost a whisper of ancient betrayal and lost heritage. Her fingers, soft and uncertain, caressed the cool metal as if trying to draw comfort from its mystery. "Ezra," she murmured in a voice that wavered like the wind through cracked adobe. "This map, I know it speaks of a sacred spring, the one my family guarded. They said it could heal our barren lands, fulfill a dream that once saved a life. But it also tells of debt and betrayal of a powerful faction that stole it from us." Her words fell in measured, sorrowful syllables, echoing the secret grief that she wore like a second skin. In that moment, the truth of her abandonment mingled with Ezra's longing for redemption, forging a connection as delicate as the desert's fragile bloom. Before Ezra could answer, a sharp knock at the door shattered the tenuous calm. The sound, echoing like a death knell against the adobe's flat surface, sent a jolt through both hearts. Outside, the wind had stilled, and in the pale light a lone figure emerged, a rugged man whose hardened face bore the mark of a ruthless land baron. His eyes, cold and calculating, swept the homestead with the precision of a predator and rested menacingly upon Lila's trembling hand and its gold band. "You," the man spat, his voice rough as gravel. "Know what you carry, girl. That miracle belongs to those who have the right to claim it." Ezra stepped forward, anger coiling in his chest along with the painful memories of loss. "Leave them out of our house," he said in a low, measured tone that belied his inner turmoil. But even as he spoke, the strangers' men circled near the door, their presence a silent battalion summoned by greed and old wounds. Tommy, the loyal ranch hand who had been surveying the scene from the far side of the yard, approached with a grim expression. "Sir, they've left fresh tracks by the western fence again," he reported in a hushed, urgent whisper. "They're not backing down." The stranger's glare deepened as he advanced, his lips curling in disdain. "The map you hide," he growled, addressing Lila directly, "carries the lineage of those who were betrayed. It is the key to the sacred spring, and it must be returned to its rightful masters." His words, laden with malice and a dark certainty, sliced through the low hum of desert night. Lila's eyes widened as though the weight of her hidden truth had suddenly become unbearable. She clutched the medallion to her chest, her fingers trembling. I cannot lose this," she stammered, voice barely audible over the soft moan of the wind. "It is all I have left." Ezra's gaze hardened, torn between the need to protect Lila and his own haunting memories of a past betrayal. "You are safe here," he repeated, though his tone wavered with both determination and an unspoken question. Was he truly able to shield her from the forces that sought to rip this miracle from her? The tension in the room thickened like the heavy dust that settled after a storm, punctuated by the distant clamor of approaching feet. As the minutes pass like long hours, the storm's remnants continue to swirl outside, cloaking the homestead in a sepia-toned haze. Ezra and Lila exchange silent glances, their bond both fragile and resolute amid the looming threat. In one quiet moment, as the embers flickered and the wind whispered secrets of old betrayals, Lila slowly withdrew a folded piece of parchment from beneath her dress. Her shaking fingers unfurled it to reveal a faded inscription, the missing half of the medallion's map. The scribbled lines, barely visible in the lantern's glow, revealed the location of the sacred spring, a hidden oasis in the heart of the desert that had been wrenched away from her family by a power hungry to control its promise. "Ezra," she whispered, her voice trembling yet laced with determination. "This is the truth I've carried with me my whole life. My family was betrayed by those who coveted the land and its life-giving waters. They stole the spring and left us to dry, and I have hidden this secret so no one can exploit it again." Her confession, raw and fragile, hung in a room as if suspended in time. Ezra's mind reeled with a torrent of memories, from his own prayers for a sign of hope to the echo of his wife's unfulfilled dream of a land healed by a miracle spring. Before Ezra could muster a reply, the distant sound of hoofbeats crescendoed once more, and the group's tension spiked. The stranger sneered, "It seems your little secret has cost you dearly." With that, his men emerged from the shadows, their eyes alight with ill intent. In that charged moment, a fierce ambush loomed imminent, threatening to undo the fragile sanctuary they had built amid the desert's relentless cruelty. Ezra moved swiftly, his voice rising in defiant command. "Tommy, gather the men. We will not let them take what is ours." Amid the chaos, the soft clatter of a harmonica began to play from somewhere beyond, a melancholic tune that intertwined with the sound of the approaching threat. As the stranger's men closed in, Ezra's heart pounded with the dual languages of fear and hope. Each beat a prayer for redemption, and an echo of a promise made long ago in silent, desperate nights. Lila's eyes locked with Ezra's as the ambush drew nearer, her expression a mix of terror and steely resolve. In that heartbeat of silent reckoning, the meaning of her secret, the sacred spring, the miracle that had been hidden from her, and Ezra's own lost dreams converged into one inescapable truth. The parchment in her hand trembled as if echoing the coming storm of conflict, and the medallion shone with inner fire, its ancient inscription a beacon amidst the darkness. As the stranger's men splintered into the homestead's threshold, the tension became palpable. Each breath laden with possibility, each moment suspended like the last light of a wounded day. In that grim pause, the future hung on a razor's edge. With the miracle of the sacred spring, the promise of healing that Lila carried, finally redeemed the shattered dreams of a widower, or betrayal and greed crushed all hope under the relentless weight of the Nevada desert. As the ambush grows imminent and the sacred map threatens to expose everything, will Ezra's lost hope be restored by the miracle Lila carries, or will the darkness of the past devour their fragile future? Hoofbeats pounded across the parched earth as moonlight shattered through the lingering clouds, and the ambush gathered near Silver Sage Ranch. In that critical moment, with the storm's fury barely abated, the desert's cold clarity revealed a scene of fierce determination and fragile hope. Ezra McKay stood at the weathered threshold of his adobe homestead, his sorrowful eyes fixed on the approaching enemy. In his hand, Lila's sacred map, discovered from her gold band and silver medallion, glowed with an almost otherworldly light. This map, etched with the crest of a ram entwined with slender sword, held the promise of a hidden spring, the miracle his late wife had once prayed for. Now it was their only shield against a past that threatened to devour their fragile future. Inside, Lila sat near the low, cracked window, her pale face lit by the flickering flame of a battered lantern. Her eyes, deep as the desert night, trembled with apprehension and resolve. In her hand, she clutched the map as though it were the very key to her identity, a secret legacy that drew both hope and peril. The whispered words of the note, "Beware the mark of silver in the shadow," echoed ceaselessly in her mind. She had carried this secret for so long in silence, Its revelation now risked exposing truths that powerful forces coveted. Outside, the air was thick with tension and the bitter scent of rain on hot sand. Tommy, the loyal ranch hand, hurried along the perimeter to fortify the homestead's meager defenses. "Ma'am, sir, their numbers grow," he warned in a hushed tone, his eyes darting nervously toward the dark figures forming at the western fence. The strangers, the land baron's mercenaries, moved with a predatory purpose, their mounted silhouettes outlined against the restless sky. Ezra's grip on his worn hat tightened. Memories of endless, prayerful nights surged within him. Nights spent pleading for a miracle to heal the barren land. Nights when his late wife's dreams of a flourishing oasis in the unforgiving desert had been nothing more than a whispered hope. Now, with the map's glow and Lila's secret, that miracle seemed possible, but at a steep price. He stepped forward, his voice low and resolute. "We stand as one. I will not let them steal our future." The calm before the storm shattered as the enemy closed in. The first of the mercenaries raised his rifle, and Ezra's instincts flared into immediate action. In rapid, tense moments, a skirmish erupted before the homestead's battered door. Amid a flurry of gunshots and the shrill barking of Bandit, who darted between foes and friend alike, Ezra fought with a relentless, quiet fury. Each shot was measured, each step deliberate. His actions were a plea for redemption for his lost family and an oath to protect Lila, the miracle she unwittingly carried. Within the chaos, Lila's eyes were fixed on the map's inscription, a cryptic series of lines that, when aligned with the contours of the land, pointed to a hidden spring. The legend told that this spring would heal the most parched lands and restore life where despair reigned. As the skirmish wore on, a bullet whistled past, scoring deep into the adobe. Ezra's heart pounded like a mournful drum as he saw one of the enemy men falter, but there was no rest. The onslaught was unyielding. Tommy rallied a small group of ranch hands, and together they began to push back the attackers, using the harsh terrain and their intimate knowledge of the land to their advantage. Between bursts of gunfire, Ezra caught sight of the land baron, a gaunt, ruthless figure whose cold eyes glittered with greed, observing the scene from atop a rocky outcrop. That look, so laden with malice, sent a chill down Ezra's spine. It was clear the bear would stop at nothing to reclaim what he believed was his by right, the sacred secret that Lila unknowingly harbored. Amid this turmoil, Lila, her face streaked with grime and determination, stepped forward. "Ezra," she said in a hushed yet steady voice, "the map, it reveals the spring's exact location. My family guarded those waters for generations. They were betrayed by men like him." Her words carried the weight of lifelong abandonment and the promise of vengeance against those who had stolen her legacy. Ezra, his eyes burning with remembered regret and a newfound purpose, approached her slowly. "Then we shall claim this miracle for all we have lost," he declared, the fire of hope flickering back in his weary gaze. "This spring, it is not only the answer to our drought, but the redemption for my wife's unfulfilled dream." The declaration, uttered amid the clangor of conflict, transformed the desperate skirmish into an act of retribution and promise. As if spurred by these words, the momentum of the battle began to shift. With renewed vigor, Ezra and Tommy led a counterattack that drove the land baron's men back, their disciplined precision slowly eroding the attackers' resolve. The baron himself, enraged by the turn of events, bellowed a challenge from his elevated perch. "Bring me the map, or all shall perish in the desert's wrath," he roared, his voice echoing across the barren expanse like a curse. Ezra's eyes met Lila's as he fought his way toward the outcropping. With each step, memories of his lost family, of tender prayers uttered in the stillness of night, propelled him forward. In a bloodless moment that seemed to stretch across the churning skies, Ezra reached the baron's vantage. The man's sneer faltered as Ezra paused before him, his voice barely audible over the wind's mournful cry. "Your greed has starved this land for too long," Ezra intoned. "Tonight, the stolen waters will flow again." In that instant, as if guided by fate itself, The silver medallion that Lila had so carefully safeguarded began to glow brighter, its inscription now clearly illuminating a path through the storm. Lila's eyes shone with a mixture of triumph and trepidation as she clutched the map to her chest. "This is our heritage," she whispered, voice trembling as the sacred lines danced before her eyes. "I have lived in shame, abandoned and broken, but within this secret lies the promise of healing." Her confession was a fragile libation poured forth in the twilight of despair, daring the cruelty of fate to be undone. In the climactic moments that followed, Tommy and the remaining ranch hands succeeded in fending off the last of the attacker ranks. The enemy retreated, their hooves echoing like fading laments in the distance, while the land baron, his rage unsated, disappeared into the encroaching darkness. The homestead, battered yet unbowed, settled into an uneasy calm as the storm's remnants hushed and the desert reclaimed its quiet majesty. Later that night, as the cool serenity of post-battle calm wrapped the homestead in a soft embrace, Ezra and Lila sat side by a modest fire. The embers glowed like tiny beacons against the overwhelming darkness. Ezra, his eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and soft hope, reached out and took Lila's hand, his rough fingers encircling hers in a gesture of forgiveness and longing. "I carried my wife's dream in secret prayers, hoping someday the land would heal," he murmured, his voice steady yet edged with melancholy. "And now it seems your secret, the sacred map, has brought that dream to life." Lila's gaze fell to the gold band on her wrist, then lifted to meet his. "I was once abandoned, cast aside as a burden of shame," she confessed softly, the quiet honesty of her words resonating in the still night. "But maybe here, with you, I can reclaim the worth that others denied me." Ezra's expression softened as he squeezed her hand. "You give me hope, Lila. You become part of something greater than our past sorrows, a promise that this land can flourish again." His voice, though low and measured, was imbued with quiet conviction. Outside, the desert whispered of renewal as a cool breeze swept across the hardened soil, carried with the subtle, shimmering promise of life reborn. The sacred map, now glowing faintly in the flickering firelight, revealed a hidden path etched into the parchment, a route that led from the homestead to the source of the sacred spring. In the distant valleys beyond the mesquite groves, water shimmered like liquid silver under the moon's gaze, a hidden oasis that could restore the barren earth to vibrant life. For Ezra, that spring was a miracle he had once prayed for, a tangible realization of his wife's dream to heal the parched land and mend the broken hearts it had long witnessed. As the night grew deeper, the judgment of past and present faded into a soft hum of acceptance and fragile hope. The homestead, scarred yet resolute, stood as a testament to the resilience of those who dared to strive against fate's cruelty. Ezra and Lila, now bonded by shared loss and the promise of renewal, gathered with Tommy and a few kind-hearted locals around the fire. Their voices rose in a tentative chorus of optimism, each word a small victory over the darkness that had once threatened to consume them. In a bittersweet epilogue, the following dawn revealed a transformed landscape. Where once there was only barren sand and reluctant stone, a trickle of pure water now wound its way through the valley, a sign that the sacred spring had indeed been reclaimed. Ezra and Lila stood side by side, their eyes reflecting the wonder of new life stirring beneath the Nevada sun. Though scars of the past still lay deep within their hearts, they had forged a family from their shared pain and a newfound purpose that promised to heal not only the land but themselves. As the sun's gentle warmth bathed Silver Sage Ranch in golden light, and the water from the sacred spring began to nurture the soil, Ezra whispered, "We have found peace at last." Lila's quiet smile spoke volumes. Hope had taken root where despair once reigned. And in that final moment, with the harmonica's soft note trailing into the awakening dawn, the miracle that both had carried was embraced, a fragile promise of resurrection amid a timeless, sorrowful desert.